Welcome to 1/5 of the world's fresh water on Lake Michigan, the second biggest of the Great Lakes. It's 22,440 square miles of open water. What makes this such a popular place is our gnarly coastline. It's 2 hours from Chicago, it's an hour from Milwaukee, it's an hour from Green Bay, it's an hour and a half from Madison. It's very accessible. We are located centrally on Lake Michigan, so we get a swell out of the north or northeast or southeast, which produces waves, which makes this a popular area for surfing. Along with our point breaks, our coves, our 1 mile long pier, our reef, and rocky outcroppings. This is easily one of the best places to experience surfing in the Midwest.
Now this will sound counterintuitive, but because of the flooding, the lake is gone, truly gone.
This whole lake, 3 hours empty. Came by it was here, went back home, it was gone.
It was built in 1866, and then it was originally found by Kent Belbridge in 1975.
Yeah, when I saw it, I thought.
And it actually went down April 16th of 1880.
The lettering was old. It's going to be like a whaler. Kind of a scrappy harpoon you got there.
There's that little ramp there, isn't there? That little
Isn't there like a road that goes right
right down to the water by Cleveland.
Right.
Hika?
Yeah. Right.
That's where most of the algae is. It's like the epicenter. Oh yeah?
Okay, well we're going to be diving about a couple miles offshore and there next.
I'd be interested to hear what you see.
Yeah, that'd be really interesting because that's the McMullen Putz dredge. Or Pitts dredge and that Putz. No, Putz. That dredge sometimes will have really good visibility and sometimes it's really bad because depending on what the runoff is along the shore. So it'll be really interesting to see how bad it is today. I would suspect it'd be bad today.
Yeah.
Although it might clear up about 80 feet, but that's at the bottom.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see what the thermocline is that close to shore this time of year.
Okay. Yeah.
See you later.
Yeah, see the first part of it's not so bad, but then as we're going down, as you can see, the particles in the first 40 feet is what's shutting off the sunlight, and that's why it's getting darker and darker and darker.
Now is that green designed from the camera to pick up certain types of light, or is that actually
That's pretty much the color that it is, that the water is. And you can see how dark it is, and these are all zebra mussels, these little scatters and stuff along there that you see, that looks kind of like sparkly. Those are all zebra mussels covered on the shipwreck. They're like razor blades, they're so sharp, and even with our thick, dry gloves that are made out of rubber, they'll slice them and we'll get a leak in our gloves. So, no, you don't want to be touching this. And even with your dry suits, they're not cheap to repair, so you're pretty careful about not bumping and rubbing alongside them because they can slice the neoprene. This is a picture taken on the dredge with ambient light last year. So it gives you an idea of how the water is bluer because there's less algae in it. And taken with the same camera is what we just took with that video before where it was very green. That's the deck of the Walter B. Allen. And that's when on the video where Russ was coming out of the cargo area and he turned his flashlights on the pump there. I mean, you saw how black it was. Once again, this picture was taken with ambient light. It's still a little bit dark. You can still see a little bit of light from the flashlight, but that person is about 50 feet away.
We're looking at the bottom of the lake now.
Those are all dead zebra mussels that I was talking about earlier that have been starting to literally clutter the lake bottom.
About 6 weeks ago, there was a severe case of Cladophora algae on the beach. Around that time, was there a lot of what you see here, this poor visibility with the green color?
Yes, and also at that time when the winds came offshore and I kind of blew that offshore, we actually had large clumps of algae floating in the water.
At the dredge? Or?
On the dredge, yes. But once again, you can see how dark it is because of the beam on the light. And normally we do not use flashlights at all on this shipwreck.
So come on down and join me in the... No.
No. We don't want to go.
Everybody's afraid of this? This is nothing. So this is the Cladophora issue, and interestingly enough, our fire department comes here when we have emergencies, and there was a large box company that burned a couple years ago, and they came here trying to get water. Well, this is what they got. And it was very difficult trying to get water into the trucks in order to take it over to the fire. So not only are there power company issues with too much Cladophora, there are firefighting issues.
That's part of the issue, and it's part of the ambiguous and non-uniform set of circumstances that the DNR and the legislature and the county soil and water districts are faced with. You know, who's responsible?
we appreciate and understand the economic value and the economic connection of Lake Michigan to a lot of businesses and industries in our state, but that doesn't mean that we can't be good stewards of the lake and also help everybody to realize that we benefit economically in a big way. You mentioned tourism. We benefit greatly from the Great Lakes and from our presence and our connection to it.
Our county has 3,000 jobs dependent upon tourism. You're not going to get tourists coming back if you've got this kind of issue. And in terms of the inland lakes, it's the same kind of thing. Property values, if you've got too much phosphorus leading to this kind of material. So we all share in some of these kinds of issues. Depending upon the agricultural practices, unfortunately, one of the things that can happen is we get too much phosphorus that ends up running into the water. This spring, our group, Centerville Cares, did monitoring of the water in Point Creek that goes into Lake Michigan, and we did that just before it rained. And we looked at the water in Point Creek before it went through a farm field and right after it came out of that farm field, and the amount of phosphorus in the water went up by about 10 times. And it looks like in this particular case it was mostly a result of some reckless kind of manure spreading, a lack of buffers. We all want to get buffers. There aren't any buffers in this particular area, and the ground was already saturated, so the manure, instead of soaking in, tended to run off.
But a couple of years ago, I tried to allocate some state funding, specifically in an earmark or an allocation for a study on the cladifera, so that we could get a factual understanding of what it is and how the problem can be corrected. And unfortunately, that got vetoed during the budgeting process.
Here, the trip today, I invited every county board supervisor. I invited all 3 supervisors from all 18 townships. There's nobody here. And these are issues that are within their powers. There's powers within the county board, the committees that directly respond to that. And town government does the job. They have the boating laws and a lot of the individual lake authorities to do ordinances. So I encourage you to identify your county board supervisor and ask why they're not here today. Well, it was the worst, actually the water quality originally was the worst in the state. It was the worst lake with the highest phosphorus readings in the state of Wisconsin. That's how bad it was.
If we're having major limitations on funding for a park such as this, it deserves some scrutiny.
That's part of it. I think the other part of it is having citizen involvement to foster new ideas and change the status quo. That's got to come from some leadership, though, of somebody's got to organize the people and the groups and the politicians, because frankly, I think the issue is many of our people that serve on these committees, they themselves don't use these facilities. They're not partakers of the environment that some of the people are. So for them to come out here and identify with what's wrong, it isn't going to happen.
If they had cladifera on their beaches in Manitowoc and Sturgeon Bay and Egg Harbor and Bailey's Harbor and Port Washington like you have here, it would be a public uproar.
So in Manitowoc, I would do much better for our Great Lake if I was able to spend city taxpayer dollars outside of our city where the real runoff is occurring, and that would have a more dramatic impact.
But we all can make a difference as citizens, you know, and that's where, you know, it isn't just a state senator or a state government or a county board supervisor that's going to determine the future quality of Lake Michigan. And there's so many simple things that all of us can do.
Fortunately, most of our landowners are trying to do the right thing.
What would help and would be of no economic detraction to anybody would be training people and certifying people who are actually out doing the spreading to get them to not do this sort of reckless manure spreading in the first place.
It's 11,000 miles of coastline here on the Great Lakes, which makes up more coastline than the east and west coast of the U.S. combined.
I think that they need to raise their hand and say, we're a part of this problem and we're going to work on the problem.
I'd like to think I'd inspire younger people to get more active in the outdoors and become aware. Because, I mean, if they become involved, they care more, and, you know, they take care of the environment better.
But it's getting off the computer and interconnecting with the true lifestyle of the beach.
We can't do anything about the water clarity. We can't do anything about the rocky shoreline, which is what Cladoffer likes to grow on. But we can cut the phosphorus going into the lake.
In the big waves that Lake Michigan can produce, and Lake Michigan can produce waves in excess of 24 feet several times a year. It's one of the most treacherous bodies of water in the world.
Well, you know, Manitowoc is intrinsically tied to Lake Michigan. I mean, throughout our entire history with shipbuilding and fishing, right now with the Lake Michigan car ferry being a big part of our economy, it just is very, very, very important for us to take care of our water. That's an amazing ecosystem out there, and there's no doubt that water connects people in a way that no other medium does.
After doing all these talks with Joe and DNR and Department of Agriculture and Trout Unlimited and all these other groups, it's clear that we got to band together as many of these groups as we can into a single big lobby, if you want to call it that, and go to Madison if we got to and stand on the front steps of the Capitol if we have to and say, look, this problem needs to be addressed. That's, in my opinion, the only way that we're going to get some action to proceed on this issue.